Get in the game with the college-branded Venmo debit card. Wreck your team with every tap and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash, a new rewards program from Venmo. No monthly fee, no minimum balance, just school pride and spending power. Get in the game and sign up for the Venmo debit card at venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, your host for this episode of Under the Dome for the week of Monday, February 6, 2023. This month on Under the Dome, we're going to celebrate Black History Month by taking a closer look at Black history, Black lawmakers, and legislation in North Carolina. On today's episode, I have two guests who are state lawmakers from Durham, Representative Vernetta Alston and Senator Natalie Murdock, who are both Democrats. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, Dawn. Looking forward to the conversation.
So I want to start talking about both of you growing up and when you first learned about Black history, about, I don't remember, Black History Month, or about just history and realizing that this is also a different significance with Black history, and just from in school. I mean, was it talked about in school? Was it like later as an adult? What do you remember? If each of you want to talk a little bit about what you learned growing up. Representative Alston, if you want to go first.
Sure. Thanks, Dawn. Well, I'm from North Carolina, from Durham, and, all my family's from, in and around Durham County. So I think from an early age, I've felt and I think appreciated kind of the history that my family has in this area, and kind of why it's, the aspects of my history that are related to kind of race and the history of race in this country. In terms of kind of when I remember understanding Black history and Black History Month, I wouldn't take my memory as any historical fact in terms of what I remember from my childhood. But certainly I'm sure thinking in Black History Month as this like time of celebration and of education likely happened in school. And I think my appreciation of Black history came, again, just from my own family.
Well, tell us about your family growing up in Durham. Well, I know it's Durham and then Cary also, but your grandmother is from Hayti neighborhood.
Yeah, so my mom grew up in Hayti. My dad grew up kind of near Central, off of Plum Street. And all of my grandparents lived in Durham. My grandfather was a chauffeur and a butler for a big doctor. My grandmother was a domestic worker for two prominent families who lived in Trinity Park, and another grandparent was a farmhand. The other we ran a daycare around Fayetteville Street. So, that history is really rich. But I mean, as I'm sure Senator Murdock can relate, we can trace at least parts of our family background dated back 6-7 generations. Just a few miles from where I live now. And, that makes it's a complicated history, but one that I have I feel like gratitude that I have the kind of proximity that I have to it, because I think it forces a kind of appreciation, but also accountability and reflection kind of on where we've been and where we still need to go.
Senator Murdock, do you remember anything formal in school? Was it just... She got older? Or?
Yeah, just like Representative Alston, deep ties to North Carolina, all the way back to slavery, actually, to Orange County, North Carolina. My grandparents are laid to rest in Orange County. And for me, being born and raised in Greensboro, just like so many other cities in North Carolina, just have direct ties, particularly to the civil rights movement. So grew up definitely knowing about the A&T4 and the Woolworth sit-ins. Two of my aunts actually left high school to march with them. So I reflect on that February 1 and think about the fact that they were a junior and a senior in high school and left the high school that I attended years later, James B. Dudley High School. And my grandmother is a Black history person in her own right, actually started a cafeteria strike in Guilford County schools, which led to their wages being raised. I think they were making $1 and some change, and after months and months of protest, they were able to get up to $3. So was always aware of their history. But formally for me, it was being that I was born and raised in Greensboro. There was a very popular summer enrichment camp at North Carolina A&T State University. And so I went there probably first grade through maybe even fourth or fifth. And we learned not only African-American history, but African history. That's when I learned about Kwanzaa, when I learned, honestly, history that I wasn't getting in my schools. There were specific projects that helped me to connect to very direct historians. Madam C.J. Walker, I remember I was really excited about a project that I did about her and some other notable folks here in North Carolina. But definitely for me, that summer enrichment camp was where I was really extremely proud of Black history and African-American history.
It's interesting that both of you mentioned your grandparents. What did you learn from your grandparents?
Well, maybe I was going to add this and think it might answer your question too. In thinking about Black History Month, a way that I feel like I've been kind of directly impacted by my own experiences with my grandparents, and also just what I know of them and their lives, is that, during Black History Month, we rightly celebrate so many leaders, so many people who broke barriers, who were firsts, were very accomplished in their lives, and I think that is absolutely essential to do and to celebrate in Black History Month. But I think because of where I've come from, where my family and my kin have come from, it feels equally as important to lift up, the incredibly important contributions of Black workers, of folks who, kind of gave a lot, who weren't, they weren't bestowed with a lot of titles or credentials or, accomplishments that we would kind of read on paper and be in awe of, but who lived awe-inspiring lives just by virtue of their sacrifice, what they struggled with day in and day out, and the groundwork they laid so that, folks like myself could kind of be here in this position today. So I think kind of celebrating those folks and those communities is just as important in Black History Month.
Did any of your grandparents live to see where you all are now?
Not where I am, but the walk-in, I will never forget how proud my grandmother was when Barack Obama was elected president. I swear everywhere she went, she wore an Obama for president t-shirt. She believed before I did. I, like a lot of folks, just said, I don't know. Is America really ready for this? So I'm thrilled that she was still here to see that. But I can't imagine what any of my grandparents would think about, wow, their granddaughter is a state senator. They knew I was politically active, but I don't think they would have envisioned this. But it's humbling, I think for both of us having ties all the way back to, pre-Reconstruction era right here in North Carolina. It is something that I remind myself all the time of how, no matter how tough it gets, how not only fortunate we are, how blessed we are, and knowing we really have a duty to serve because of our deep ties to this state. We love this state, and that we deserve to have full access to the power that we have and the influence we have as legislators every day.
You both were born after the Civil Rights Movement. You're the younger end of the lawmakers. How much did your grandparents or others talk about what they had to do? You talked about the workers. Was it just kind of just an everyday conversation? Did they, a lot of people when they get older, they want to reflect on their lives more and talk to family and tell their stories more. Was there any of that from any of them on either side? Or you saw your grandmother in Greensboro. You said you knew it while everything was going on.
Absolutely. For me, I lean into it all the time. I speak about it often because I always center my work with the work that they did. And even my father, we both unfortunately have lost our fathers, but he was NAACP Man of the Year in Greensboro. So they speak of those stories often. And I think really for us, like you said, we're in that generation where we weren't physically there during the Civil Rights Movement. Of course, we know it happened. We're also serving after leaders. I mean, especially in Durham, you have Mickey Michaud and Floyd McKissick, who are served right after, whose father, all those iconic photos with Dr. King, his dad's right there marching with him. He's in the African American Smithsonian in D.C. So I think we still grapple with, what does the movement look like today? What does it look like to serve in these spaces where we didn't grow up in segregated schools, we benefited from all of the work that they did. But more than anything now, with the current political climate, still see we have so much farther to go. So we're not only, the torch has definitely been passed and we're carrying the mantle, but I think we're still grappling with, when we have power, what do we do with it? How do we share it? How do we really work to get better opportunities and more equality for all people of color?
We need to take a break in a minute, but before we do, I want to talk about women. You talked about the names that are lifted up in history, and then a lot of in Durham's Black history, it's men who were like the power centers with education and business, and they're the ones that have the schools named after them and everything like that. And women now, but not as much historically. So when we come back from the break, I want to ask you all about when you saw that there was a path for women and who inspired you. So we'll be right back with more conversation with Senator Murdock and Representative Alston and our headliners of the week, and lots more that will fit in.
Not sure how to tackle your taxes? Are you sweating the small print? You may be experiencing FOMO, the fear of messing up. The answer? Using TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They help you get your biggest refund, and then we help you do more with it, with a personalized plan designed to help you hit your money goals. It's time to take your taxes to the max. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm News and Observer Politics reporter Dawn Vaughan, here with two state lawmakers, Representative Vernetta Alston and Senator Natalie Murdock, both Democrats from Durham. Before the break, we were talking about Black lawmakers, women Black lawmakers in particular, and I wanted to hear what they thought about who's gone before and paving the way for them, and in the future for other women that want to run for office. So either one of you have thoughts on that? About I've mentioned on the podcast multiple times, I used to cover Durham government. I covered Representative Alston when she wasn't even city council member Alston yet for running. So let's start with you then. Why did you want to run for office? Where did you see that this was something that you should do, and then wanting to go from council to the General Assembly?
I think, given the theme of the conversation, what I can say is when I thought about running, my wife and I just had our first child. And so I'd say, well, while I was thinking about it, it was like, kind of newborn to 3.5 months. And it certainly crossed my mind a lot that running for office, whether win or lose, it was something that I could demonstrate to her I could do, and that my extension she could do, that any girl in her generation could do. And I thought about, my grandmother, but also my mom, and I think I naturally had this impulse to want to make them proud, and to do justice to all their hard work and, again, the sacrifices that they made over the course of their lives to kind of put me in this position.
When you were on city council, I remember you mentioned workers earlier. You were part of the Durham Workers Commission and getting that going when you were on council too. Right, and I was very grateful to work with my colleagues in the council and the administration, and certainly a lot of folks in the community to start that commission. It hopes that it gives people a voice, and I'm not up to date on the work that they're doing now, but I recall the conversations that they were having about just fighting for workers' rights and to keep those issues at the forefront of the business community's kind of minds was really, really important, particularly at a time of such intense growth in Durham. I remember you were in council and you came over for a press conference about labor, and it was a local state crossover episode of the General Assembly and everything. Right. So Senator Murdock, you started in local government at the county level first. Why did you want to run? Who did you see ahead that you felt either directly encouraged you or and coming after?
Yeah, really for me, even before being a soil and water commissioner, even when I lived in Asheville for 5 years, and interned for the city of Asheville, worked for a council of government. And really, for me, the issue was transportation. People forget how bipartisan transportation is, how political it is. And so I staffed a board, which, fun fact, that is how I first met Senator Julie Mayfield. She was actually on our Citizen Advisory Committee, so now I serve with her in the Senate. But I just always going to county commission meetings and city council meetings and getting more active. So Asheville was actually the first time I was approached to run for office. Someone approached me in Asheville to run for city council, but I didn't think I would settle down and remain in Asheville long term. So fast forward to, was still in transportation in Durham at the time, was working on the light rail project. So I was in the community, out there active. Again, was just catching up with a resident in East Durham. And I thought we were just going to hang out and I was going to get updates on the community, and almost fell through the floor when he said, I really think you should run for Durham City Council. So didn't do that. Years later, my mentor, who's now deceased, Brother Ray, was soil and water supervisor. And he approached me to run for his seat. And since he had served for 20 plus years, I could not say no, and was very comfortable and happy as a soil and water supervisor. And then in redistricting, I was no longer in Rep Moore's seat or Senator Woodard. I was in what is the old Senate District 20 by one precinct, and was already really active with the Durham Democrats. I was first vice chair. So the statistics held up for me. It was about the 8th or 10th phone call before I took it seriously. At first, I just said, I'm fine where I am, and was more than a lot of folks didn't even know. I was working on other projects where I was already going to the General Assembly a decent amount, just advocating for various issues, just as an independent person that was passionate about things. And I think when I finally decided to run, it really struck me that we have these historic leaders in Durham, but at the time of only having 2 senators, we didn't have a woman representing Durham. And the old Senate District 20 was 52% female. So I thought it was really odd that we didn't have a woman that was going to file and run. And so I said, I'm more than happy to do that. And also being that I was unmarried at the time, was I think 34, 35, and knew that voice was needed in the General Assembly. So it was myself, Representative Alston, and Senator Salvador. There were no Black women under 40 in the General Assembly. And we have student loan debt. We've dealt with multiple recessions right after graduation. So we do have a different perspective that is very relevant, and those voices were needed in the General Assembly. And so thrilled to uplift those issues that so many women across the state are facing every day.
You didn't have the easiest primary, as I recall.
No, I did not.
People who are listening to that, I think everyone knows that Durham is a majority Democrat town. So a lot of the politics happens during the primary or before the primary. Even, and that's...
I'm sorry to report, I no longer fall in the under 40 category. No, I look back on those days fondly.
I don't either. So
yeah, we still claim it. But I mean, but to that primary, back to the numbers, people just didn't know that many women were in that district. And when I ran the numbers, I said, if I do well with women, I can win this. And back to my transportation background, I always crunch the numbers. You know, Stacey Abrams said it best. You don't just need a path to win, you need the math to win. And I knew numerically if women turned out in large numbers, and you see that in Durham. We have so many women serving as judges and various levels of government. And that's a big part of why is women are very, very reliable voters, and they want to be represented because they've waited so long when they had no representation. When you walk the halls of the General Assembly, we recently lost the first Black woman to serve in the General Assembly, Dr. Annie Kennedy. And to go back to that portrait and see no women and then no Black women, and then she finally appears, it's long past time. And I'm glad that now, for the first time in the Senate, have a female majority in the Democratic caucus.
Why do either one of you think there aren't more Black women in the House or Senate?
I think there's so many factors. It is really hard. It is not easy. I mean, even me being single, working and legislating is no joke. It is hard. I support myself. I don't have anyone to share bills with. So it's challenging. You have to have a flexible job. And for me, I was consulting on my own since 2017. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have run. And ironically, already had an office on Fayetteville Street. So I knew in session, I can run down the street and still work, but particularly for our legislative colleagues that our parents and, partners, it is just a lot to balance. And then the barriers are that much greater if you're a Black woman with having access to the resource and capital you need to even raise the money to run, let alone to have a flexible job that actually allows you to serve, since we pay our legislators a whopping $13,900 a year. So that's why it took so long to get Black women under 40, because of those barriers and challenges.
Yeah, I was going to comment on particularly on the campaign side and how difficult that is under any circumstance. But I think given the barriers that so many Black people, particularly Black women, experience in life, and then you kind of layer on the constraints and difficulties of running competitive campaigns and winning, these types of seats, it's a challenge.
And it's constant when you're running every 2 years. So you have to have a life where it fits every 2 years.
Was there a moment that you had just thinking yourself that of how you're talking about, parents and grandparents, but yourself as a role model, where either someone said that to you or you just saw a field trip of kids coming and knowing that they saw you or anything like that? Was there any moment like that you like paused for a minute? You thought about it?
I don't think about it regularly. I mean, I certainly appreciate those opportunities. I think everyone around this table probably knows of the unfortunate Black History Month event I had in 2019. And I think that was one of the first really like impactful moments for me on my potential as a role model, and the way that I think the very positive way that folks in my community perceive me and the role that I play. And our connection, in particular with young people, the real power I think that we hold and the opportunity that we have on when I had that incident where I was disinvited from the Black History Month event, and the kids just in droves really spoke out, and that was really powerful for me.
Do you want to, I ask people that maybe weren't aware or the quick version of it, so.
I don't really want to, but it seemed relevant. Why don't you summarize it? That's a resident.
I was hiring city council at the time, so you were a student at Immaculata, right? So Immaculate Conception Catholic Church in Durham had Representative Alston, and she's a city council member, as a Black History Month speaker, and within the, I don't remember the exact specifics of who within the Catholic Church hierarchy decided that they did not want an LGBTQ Black History Month speaker, and disinvited then City Council Member Alston. The students were not happy with that. The families were not happy with that. There's, I believe, a few weeks of drama. And then tell us what the result was at the end.
And the result was I worked with a number of the parents who had formed I forget what they call themselves, essentially a committee of folks who were tasked with planning the programming for Black History Month. So I worked with them and ultimately with the church administration to come back and speak to the as many folks from the school community and the church community as wanted to hear what I had to say a few weeks after, which was kind of early March. So had a great conversation. There was some singing by groups of the children and church parishioners, and it was a good evening, and I think the right conclusion to that whole ordeal.
There was a role model moment at the local government level, which is a lot closer to the people in a lot of ways, because they see and interact with you that you may not always at the legislative building on Jones Street. It's a little bit like a fortress sometimes.
But I really pushed to have that subsequent event. I think because of what we just talked about, and that's that I wanted to show the kids that they should have access to me. They should have access to my message, and that persistence in that sort of circumstance is important when people are trying to silence you. And so, I think that was a really formative moment for me as a local leader.
So, Rick, did you want to think of any moments in your? I'm trying to think. How long have you been in this? Has it been it'll
be 3 years, April 1st. But for me, what was humbling to me and surprising, it actually started with Soil and Water. I distinctly remember campaigning for Soil and Water supervisor in Durham, and it was a young Black student in high school, and she said, "Oh my goodness, I've seen you, and so excited to support you and signed up to volunteer for my campaign. So I think at that time, knowing that even with the office that's on the bottom of the ballot, people see you and they follow you. And I always tell folks that you don't know who's watching you, but someone is always watching you, but in a good way. And it makes it more attainable. It really helps people to be seen. They're just across the state. I do events across the state, and I'm just really humbled by how many folks are inspired by knowing not only that we're here, but we're speaking to issues that they care about, which is why representation really matters. Since we are of a different era, we'll shed more light on issues that other folks may not. It may not be as pressing to them. I mean, even when you look at, our battle to have the right to say what we want to do with our bodies, it's relevant to us. We're still at that age where, it still impacts us, So even when it comes to more folks that are of, childbearing age, you're going to be that much more passionate about those issues because you're still fighting them every day. So it really, really means a lot, and it's something that I take seriously, which is why I always love going to schools, love working with students, love when I receive those letters from students as young as elementary school and going to their schools because they need to see themselves in government.
I want to talk quickly before we move on to headliner and then a new segment that I've added when lawmakers come on the show that it's very inside baseball. You'll appreciate the circle listening that spend time at the legislative building. But I want to talk quickly about two different things regarding legislation. It's been in multiple budgets. This is a budget season again. The African American monument on the Capitol grounds was in the works, installed by Cultural Resources. So just each of you quickly, do you think that, I know that Freedom Park is a totally separate project, blocks away, but the Capitol grounds does not have an African American's monument that's been in the works and all the studies and committees and everything for years. That background is there. So Senator Murdock, do you think that's something that should be a priority or just like on the table for when things work?
It should, and have been on the Black Caucus Executive Board as a freshman, and so now as someone who served a little longer, to my knowledge, it's always been a priority for the Legislative Black Caucus. It will continue to be. I don't see why it would not be included. And we also provide our own budget requests to the House and Senate, so definitely believe that we'll be in there. And I think it was a missed opportunity. I think with the reckoning we've honestly had nationwide, it really, really should be there. And again, so thankful for the financial support we've received for Freedom Park, but also in our Capitol grounds, we have a right to see not only diversity reflected, but the people who were a part of building the state and making it great. So we really, really should have that physically reflected in our public spaces on Capitol grounds.
Representative Alston?
I can't agree more. I don't know that I have anything different to say. I think it absolutely should be something that is on the table that we consider seriously and it elevate to a priority.
I've read some of the plans for that, and the researchers determined that the most frequent or number one visitor to the Capitol grounds are students on field trips. So since we're talking about education, we're quick legislation. I appreciate both of your time and talking about yourselves and everything else here. One thing that's going to be coming up this session that Speaker Moore has told me that he plans to bring back is it's called the Anti-Critical Race Theory Bill, or that's how it's been described. It basically regulates how race is taught in schools. Quickly, I just wanted to get each of you your takes on that, and that coming up, and potentially for if Governor Cooper vetoes it, overrides, and how that could impact education. Representative Alston?
Sure. Obviously, the type of legislation you're describing, we've seen before. It's dangerous. Our children, our students deserve to know the truth about our history. And, it's ultimately a political distraction. This is something that's being manufactured by the Republican Party, and it's going to have real consequences for our children, for our teachers, for our schools, at a time when we should be talking about the fact that, I think teacher vacancies have tripled in the last 3 years. Our teachers are leaving in something greater than droves. There are real crises going on in our schools that need immediate attention.
Senator Murdock?
Agree 1,000%. I think particularly coming after the height of COVID, where our school systems were pushed to the brink, parents were, teachers were, students were. We know so many of them not only were left behind, but enrollment is down in a number of our school systems. So I think we need to really focus on investing in our public schools and supporting our teachers. And it is a part of a national strategy. Instead of really funding the schools and ponying up the money we need to really pay for things, that the gaps that we know that are there. We have a court-ordered mandate through the Leandra where they've laid out how we haven't been investing in our schools the way that they should. And both of us represent Durham. It's particularly an issue in these rural communities. And what baffles me is to not address the issue when rural students are really, really the ones that are going to be left behind if we don't address these gaps and issues. And so to continue to say you want to engage in culture wars and really whitewash history when we really should be focused on supporting our children. Suicide rates are also through the roof. Let's address mental health issues. Let's address the infrastructure problems that we have with so many of our schools. So I just don't think that should be the top priority for the way that we educate our children. And we look forward to reminding folks that our American history isn't always pleasant. And that's okay. That's what our teachers are trained to do, to provide culturally appropriate curriculum and training that fits the age of that classroom. They're trained to do that, and we need to allow those teachers to do their jobs.
All right, probably something that we'll be talking a lot more about as the legislative session continues. So I'm going to switch gears to something lighter. I decided that every time a lawmaker is on the podcast, I'm going to ask them what their favorite thing is at the Legislative Cafeteria. So any of you that spend time in the building, it's several hundred people spend time in the building, and sometimes there's one choice, and it's what's in the Legislative Cafeteria, although there's the snack bar and over in the LOB. So Senator Murdock, what's your pick for the Legislative Cafeteria? What's your go-to item, or when you're glad it's on the menu?
Yeah. Sometimes the snack bar is as good as it gets when we don't have a lot of time. Learn the hard way to be more prepared by keeping good snacks in the office. But in the cafeteria, when I am treating myself, it is the sweet potato casserole. And even the fried chicken is actually very, very good. So I got a tip about that from one of the veteran LAs when I arrived my first year. So those are my top two picks.
I also like the fried chicken. Representative Alston, when you have at the cafeteria.
First, shout out to our cafeteria workers.
Yes.
Down at the General Assembly. Thanks for all you do. Usually if I'm eating in the cafeteria, I'm eating quickly. So the chicken salad sandwich on wheat, lettuce and tomato. That's my go-to.
Yeah, and the small one that's like across the parking lot, those are some good sandwiches. Yeah. And the fries with extra seasoned salt.
All right, shout out to everyone that works at the Legislative Cafeteria. All right, so we're going to end with our picks for Headliner of the Week. I'm going to go quick since I'm talking to two Durham lawmakers. Mine is Durham themed, and it's that beaver that showed up on the American Tobacco campus. I think, did the Bulls decide it was named Barry or something? I don't know, but it's so cute. And how did it get there? I don't know. But it's just funny and like a very Durham thing. And I understand the beaver is relocated, hopefully successfully, and is living out its happy life. And it should probably be the guest star at the Beaver Creek Patch.
It really should. It really should.
So mine is Barry the American Tobacco Beaver in Durham. So. Senator Murdock, what's your headline? What is your headline?
My headline of the week is the mysterious theft of our beautiful pink penguins by 21C Hotel.
Not real penguins.
Not real penguins, but they are iconic. They bring me great joy. And I was not happy with the fact that someone stole our beautiful penguins. I thought about it when I went there yesterday morning for a meeting. And I don't think folks have connected it to this national phenomenon of folks stealing animals. In Texas, there were very rare exotic animals that were stolen from the zoo. So I don't know why folks want to terrorize our very special animals. We need to love them and allow them to live their best lives.
Let them be. Representative Alston, what is your headliner of the week?
My headliner of the week are the Capel brothers. Capel's Revenge. I didn't watch the UNC Pitt game because I still refuse to accept that Pitt is an DC.
Oh,
Threshold matter. But yeah, Jeff Capel took down the Tar Heels, which much respect.
Jeff Capel, the former
Point guard. And yeah, there's some additional headlines, which I found entertaining. But yeah, just Capel's revenge. Appreciate y'all and all you've done for North Carolina.
All right, we're recording this before you all watch the Duke UNC game this weekend, but whatever happens, go Duke. All right, for the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan. Thanks to Senator Murdock, Representative Alston, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.